radio stations pull Arcade Fire's music amid sexual misconduct allegations. Now, I know that you said that people in the chat were saying they didn't know who Arcade Fire was, right? You heard some people say that?
Yeah, they're just an indie band. Their biggest album is called The Suburbs, if you haven't heard of them. It's not super relevant, but they're big enough to have a world tour. And for a scandal like this to be a pretty big deal to fans. I
feel like it's a band with a big enough size where you might have heard them but not really listened to their music. I don't know if that's necessarily small, but definitely, like you said, if Feist is opening for them, big enough.
Yeah.
So it says, some North American radio stations have stopped playing music of Arcade Fire after the rock band's frontman, Win Butler, was accused of sexual misconduct. A representative for the Canadian Broadcasting Corp told Ottawa City News and the CBC News that the broadcaster will pause playing the Grammy-winning artist's work on its CBC Music FM radio station and the Sirius XM CBC radio station 3 until we learn more about the situation. I love how they're like, it's
judge first, learn the details later.
This isn't the
guilty
government
until proven innocent.
And then there will be somebody like, actually, that's because it's not the government. It's a private company. They can do whatever they want, blah, blah, blah. But what's funny about this is, I mean, I remember one comment, just first person said, that should bum out all of the 3 people still listening to radio. But the other one that I thought about was like, is Sirius XM still a thing? Do people still use Sirius radio?
It is.
Somebody's got to be using
it. For like Howard Stern, and that's it?
Well, they give you 3 free months, I think, for like when you get a new car or something like that.
So that they live off that, like...
Pretty much.
They have like a contract with these car companies.
I haven't even activated mine. But
it's like when Disney Plus went live, they had like if you had like a T-Mobile account and you bought your plan, like you got Disney Plus, like they like threw it in there and they're like, well, I don't really want it, but I'll take it, I guess, if you're going to offer it to me. Bolsters their numbers. So it says the Montreal indie band, which won the 2011 Grammy Award for Album of the Year with its 3rd studio album, The Suburbs, has made the U.S. and Canadian music charts with singles like Reflector, Keep the Car Running, and Ready to Start. I think a lot of people have heard of Ready to Start. So do you want to get into the weeds quickly about, we need to break down what these allegations were, because the main part here is that the radio station stopped playing them. The scary part is how, like, most of them don't. Do you remember the Aziz Ansari thing?
Yep.
Where it basically amounted to like a bad date.
It has the same vibe of like 2 people who interpreted a situation entirely differently, and because it was private, we can't actually judge what happened for ourselves. And then because of the nature of headlines, it turns against the accused person no matter what, because misconduct is a blanket statement that could mean a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And it has a horrible connotation.
So it says 3 women and 1 person who identifies as gender fluid. I guess that means that they're not the other 3 women aren't a person. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, there was some awkward wording, but 4 accusers.
4 accusers.
I mean, they really could have just said 4 people accused.
Well, they needed to
but they had to make it awkward.
So that when they started using different pronouns, that it didn't seem jarring, I guess. That's fine. Says the accusers were between the ages of 18 and 23 when sexual advances from the musician allegedly occurred between the years of 2016 and 2020. They told the outlet that Butler was 30. Oh, so he was 36 at the time of the start of these allegations.
Between 34 and 36 or something.
Yes.
Or 39.
This one says that he was 36 at the start of the allegations.
He's 42 now.
And that's between 4 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's been going on for how long?
It went on for about 4 years.
Okay.
It sounds like he is just a serial cheater and had consensual affairs, and then those women regretted their decisions. But let's get into the details.
Do you want to do it from the actual Pitchfork article, or should we do it from this one here?
I think the Pitchfork article had the best information about the one called Lily.
Okay, we'll do the other ones first, and then Lily wasn't mentioned in the other.
Yeah,
ones.
I think they used some like aliases.
They're all. I believe they're all aliases.
Okay.
As far as I know, it says. In an interview with the alleged victims, most shared how their interactions with Butler began because they were fans and gradually progressed to their boundaries being ignored. To me, he was just another creepy old guy, and to her, he was her hero, a friend of one of the accusers told Pitchfork, describing a night they were out with Butler. Another person, dubbed Sarah, described being pushed to have sex to have video sex with the musician. I did everything because it was him, Sarah said. I remember being so nervous and so ashamed that I did it. He used me basically as his personal therapist and an easy way to get sex over the phone. There was actually a fair amount of good info on that. I'm going to find Sarah's in the actual article here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go down to Sarah's here. Okay. Oh, no, that was Stella. I'm sorry. There's so many names. So basically,
are they fake names?
Yeah, they were basically doing pseudonyms so that they wouldn't be applicable otherwise. So this one is basically that they met. It was at the Montreal art scene. Go up to the top.
And these are all creative types, by the way, who, yes. I mean, nothing wrong with being that type of person, being an artist, but it tends to happen that they are, not good at parsing out social dynamics as well as the rest of society.
That's true. I can
and then
that.
when you have a pair of those types of people, things are going to get misinterpreted and awkward situations are going to happen, to say the least.
Especially over the phone or video.
I also want to point. Okay, so we're going to go up here and we're going to talk about Lily. This is the case. It says Lily says that the first time she met Butler was at another band's Montreal concert in January of 2015. At the time, she was a 21-year-old art student who didn't have any particular affinity for the Arcade Fire's music. He was a 34-year-old local celebrity. She gave him a business card and received an email from him the next day. He gave Lily his cell phone number and encouraged them. So Lily is the one that goes by they, them pronouns. Butler's account of the evening differs from Lily's in one key respect. Lily says he flirted with me all night at the concert, and then Lily says their interactions were friendly, not flirtatious. And that's where this all comes back to, is they're both interpreting what happened in vastly different manners, right? Mm-hmm. So it says, soon after the meeting, they went out for drinks. An occasion, Butler described a pitchfork as a date. Lily objects to the characterization, citing the fact that that they had a longtime partner at the time, and Butler was married to his wife. Butler claims they kissed consensually during the first outing, and then Lily says that did not happen. According to Lily, they began spending time with Butler because they were open to becoming friends with them. Okay.
Now, I understand a difference in opinion of interpreting the vibe of an interaction, because that's totally intangible, and I can see how that would get misinterpreted. But just the factual events, you should be able to recall whether or not you kissed, right? Like either one of them has to be lying or has a terrible memory about that, at least.
And the part about the inner thigh,
thing was,
he characterizes it as like they were driving and he like basically reached out and grabbed her inner thigh,
and then she claims it was like inside her pants, and it's like, how do you misremember something that serious?
So who do you believe?
It doesn't ultimately matter who you believe. You don't have to believe either party, because it was something that happened privately.
Right.
And
so he said, they said.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you pick a side when you don't know any facts, really?
And the whole list of encounters between this accuser in particular and Butler are exactly that. It's either different factual retellings of what happened, and then different interpretations of the vibe of their encounter, which is totally, like, it's up for interpretation no matter what.
I want to get beyond the dynamics of each incident. I want to get into what they mention here about power dynamics in sexual relationships with musicians. Again, 80s rockers everywhere.
This seems to keep recurring over and over with public figures. Entertainers they get into a relationship with someone who is like a fan, sees them as a hero, or is not really human, and then they have a relationship, and then later on it's interpreted in an entirely different way than it was at the time. But this accuser said, like, they had no interest in Arcade Fire and had no idea who this guy was before meeting him.
But she wanted to hang out and be friends with someone, even though she was they were in a long-term relationship and he was married.
Yeah.
How did they even meet?
At a concert.
At a concert
for some other band.
The fact of the matter is that bad things are going to happen in that situation because they're not being honest about why they're spending time together.
Are we going to be led to the point where we just have to say, like, entertainers should not
basically
date anyone who isn't also a public figure, at least.
I want to point out that they constantly talk about power dynamics and that the musician had so much more power over them because of their fame and fortune. If we were going solely on the concept of power dynamics in a relationship between two nobodies, women have infinitely more power because they control the ability whether they want to have sex or not. That is the woman's decision in polite society, right? So every woman can have sex with nearly as many guys as she wants. Guys take what they can get. Entertainers are just actually the rare exception that can have sex with almost as many women as a woman could have men.
I understand that if someone is an entertainer, if a man is an entertainer, he is not. I'm not saying it's right, but he would be tempted at least to use his notoriety to get female attention.
Couldn't that go for a lot of different jobs, though?
Yes.
Like athletes or just people who make a good living?
Anybody with that level of fame. So it says, so what she said in that paragraph was that she said she did it all for him because he was famous and she was enthralled by the fact that he was famous.
But Lily wouldn't have the same excuse or explanation for why this went on.
No.
Yeah,
Because-
if you weren't even aware that they're relevant in any way, what does it matter?
Yeah.
So it says recent years have brought a reevaluation of the dynamics between sexual relationships between popular musicians and their fans. 80s rockers everywhere are shaking in their boots, I am sure. As cultural conceptions of consent have evolved to account for the idea that a power imbalance between parties can act as an instrument of pressuring or even coercion.
That's extremely dangerous.
Are we just throwing out the concept that as an adult you have agency in your own actions?
It seems like it.
I'm asking that as politely as possible. I'm not trying to be disrespectful.
Like,
to
does
anyone.
that go out the window because you're so starstruck?
We literally had an article yesterday talking about the women in Lord of the Rings. They have so much agency in the new Lord of the Rings, in the Lord of the Rings series. Are we saying that women or men, I guess, if maybe it's a guy looking to, and it's a woman entertainer looking to have sex with a guy, are they just so enthralled by the concept that the person is famous that they now have no responsibility to say no?
It's just as fair of a question, though, to pose at the entertainer. There's a lot of talk about using your platform for good in terms of social messaging, but in an authentic sense, you do in that position have to ask yourself, at least how can you avoid your platform being used for evil in a way that even slips under your radar?
Be a monk. They should all be monks.
I mean, really, it comes down to the fact that this guy is married and he's having affairs and getting himself into messy situations, which is something a lot of people do who are not in the public eye. But because he is in the public eye, it became a matter of the public's concern. One thing I want to bring up, though, is that a lot of people who bought tickets for this world tour are asking them to either cancel the world tour or allow them to have an option to refund their tickets. I think it's totally fair that they would be allowed to refund.
Yeah.
They aren't allowed to do that at the moment.
Yeah.
But it's like one of the comments on their Instagram said, there's no refund option for those of us who no longer feel comfortable attending. These tickets were really expensive during a cost of living crisis. Fans shouldn't be faced with either being out of pocket by a large sum of money or attending a show where they feel uncomfortable.
Scalp. They'll have to scalp the tickets if they want to get rid of them.
Yeah, I guess. I think it's totally fair to ask for the refund option, but I don't think it's reasonable to call for them to cancel the tour, and that's also out of your hands. It's their decision ultimately, and it's a business decision that impacts a lot more people than only Win Butler.
Right.
I'm curious, did all these allegations come out like after they announced and started selling tickets for the tour, and could that be related?
I mean, is that a big enough deal? I mean, they go on plenty of tours, right? Like, is that a big enough deal to bring these allegations to bear? Like, I like you're asking the question, like, was there an incentive for them to do so now?
Right now, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't even think that most of the attendees or like people buying the tickets or listening to Arcade Fire Arcade Fire are aware of this situation. It's a very small cohort of people who even are paying attention to it.
Yeah.
So it would really not even hurt their pockets so badly to allow the people who do care to get a refund.
You think it was an incentive, they would have waited till after the tour so they would have money to pay in lawsuits.
I'm sure that,
like that
they're doing fine as is.
Yeah.
with the records. But
and there's not legal action being taken.
No, they're just.
It's just social media banter.
What was the paragraph that you sent me earlier?
Well, did anything illegal occur according to these allegations?
All of it seemed to me to add up to bad encounters together.
The closest thing you get to an illegal, or at least an allegation of something illegal, is in Lily's story, where she says that he intruded in her home when she told him that she didn't want him to come there.
I've got that here. It
and
says,
then, like, she had to yell at him to leave.
It says, I opened my door and he pinned me up against the wall and was aggressively grabbing me by grabbing my body and sticking his tongue down my throat, Lily said. It was an attempt to be sexy and it was not okay, and it was so not okay in the context. However, Butler's statement reads, when Lily opened the door, we started kissing immediately. I don't remember who initiated it, but it was definitely mutual. It really is.
When you read something like that, it's like, don't place the burden on me, the third party who has nothing to do with these people, to parse out who is telling the truth,
right,
or who is remembering things correctly or incorrectly. It's not my problem, and it's not it's not a reflection of some kind of larger social issue. This is an interpersonal thing that involves two people. I don't have to adjudicate on it, you know?
I want to talk quickly about the Feist. Her
yeah,
statement.
so there's an opener that just backed out of the tour like a few hours ago for the whole tour, and there was a paragraph in her open letter that was interesting. She said, public shaming might cause action, but those actions are made from fear, and fear is not the place we find our best selves or make our best decisions. Fear doesn't precipitate empathy nor healing, nor open a safe space for these kinds of conversations to evolve, or for real accountability and remorse to be offered to the people who were harmed.
Was anything really...
allegedly harmed.
This paragraph is incongruous with the rest of the letter, because the rest of the letter more or less is on the side of the allegations.
Yes. She repeatedly refers to them as if they're true, not... She doesn't say allegedly.
Yeah.
She talks about them as if as if it actually happened.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I think, fair at least to point out that this puts her in a super difficult position, because she said,
thank you.
She said, to stay on tour would symbolize I was either defending or ignoring the harm caused by Win Butler, and to leave would imply I was the judge and jury. So did she just, by leaving the tour, imply she is the judge and jury, or did she not?
She's saying that
she's
those
trying
are my
her
choices.
best not to be perceived that way.
She's like, those are my choices, and I guess this is the one I have to choose.
Yeah, and I understand why that would be really hard.
Yep.
It's like, you shouldn't have to answer for the decisions that some person on tour with you makes in their personal life years ago. Mm-hmm. You don't even know the guy or what type of person he is, let alone are you responsible for answering for his actions.
Yep. And she should not be held responsible for answering for his actions. A lot of times what we see...
I can just see her DMs being like, why are you still on tour with this monster?
It's like whenever we talk about these executives at Disney or executives at Nickelodeon, a lot of these people, they don't know what's going on, and they're just doing their jobs, and they're not, maybe all the signs in the world are there, but in a world as litigious as ours is, right? Like, are you really going to make a claim that you can't prove... and then get sued by some executive? So is it kind of the same thing? Like, people in general keep their head down and want to just mind their own business. But in a case like this where it's now become very public, you can't do that as a performer.
What did you think of his wife vehemently defending him?
I mean,
so weird.
I mean, I don't know if that speaks to his innocence, but it is.
I mean,
very
she's basically saying they have an open marriage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, of course,
completely denies that
Where's her
he
accusations?
has.
Where's the accusations against her? We didn't even know.
Yeah, well, no guy would.
Yeah,
okay, not
that's
no
true.
guy, but yeah, that it was kind of fascinating that that she stood by him, saying like, "Look, I'm totally sure that he would cheat on me, but he just wouldn't force himself on a woman."
Was it cheating or was it open relationship? Is
It's
there any
unclear.
detail about that?
It's unclear. All he said was that he had consensual relationships outside of his marriage.
Yes. So,
But it's, I think this is a mistake that Shia LaBeouf might have also made in his statement to the New York Times. In Win Butler's statement to Pitchfork, he talked about his struggle with mental health and his history of being abused and his substance abuse and his depression. Yep. And it's like, you're addressing a lot of things and not the allegations,
right.
So you might as well not comment on it.
Yeah, those things kind of sound irrelevant.
Because it sounds like you're offering an explanation for something that you didn't do.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to be seen as, or if you want to be assumed innocent until proven guilty, like, don't comment on it with a bunch of history about your personal life and how much you've struggled. Like, that sounds like an admission of guilt.
They also mentioned several times here about the 18-year age gap between him and Stella. The age gap is a thing that they talk about heavily in this. They keep talking about they were 18 to 23. He was 42. But we were going to cover a story today about a bunch of older actresses that are all dating younger men, and that is championed by society now.
It's a fashion trend.
It's a fashion trend for old women to date younger men. Mm-hmm. So I see that as like we pick and choose what we're upset about at any given time, or is it the fact that it's just true that men and women are different and they want to accept that when it's beneficial to them? Like, yeah, okay, it's fine when older women date younger men because men and women are different and it's less of a power imbalance when women and men do it. But then when they want to pretend like there's no difference between men and women, then it's whenever they feel like it, they can ignore those facts.
I mean, it's obviously like peak hypocrisy, but that's what Hollywood is all about, right?
I feel like when it's adults, that's not really the most relevant issue.
It's more relevant that he's an entertainer they idolized than
he's older
that he's
than them.
Like 30 in his 30s and they're not.
Sarah,
let's move on to the Tillian Pearson story though, because actually Carter and I know about this situation. He brought it up to me when it originally came out, but I was like, wait, what? Tillian got canceled?
Yeah.
Because he replaced the most canceled musician ever.
Right. And there's a lot.
Dance Gavin Dance.
It breaks my heart.
I knew that would break your heart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tillian is, I think personally, he's, the most talented singer that Dance Gavin Dance has ever been fronted by.
He's insanely talented.
You replace Johnny Craig, who's got, or who had a lot more notable issues going on than Tillian. And for the last decade, I feel like Tillian's been nothing but just like a perfect guy in the band. It's the last person I would have assumed would.
They've reached like more success than they even had,
and even
before.
On his own. Yeah.
So do you want to tell everyone what these accusations are?
Sure. So basically, there was an anonymous post from a woman on June 1st about on Reddit about her experience dating Tillian, and it was started in April of this year.
Okay.
She said that they, I think they met online. They met on Instagram, and then they met at Swanfest. It's a festival that was in April. And she said things moved pretty quickly, which was fine. I was in that mindset of this will probably be the only time I'll get with him, so I'm down for whatever.
See, that is I just want to point out that when the musician hears that, that's what he's expecting. That the Win Butlers of the world, what they're expecting is they want to have their one time with me, and they're like, that's fine. The problem is not everyone, you can't gauge how everyone's going to react to these situations because we're also different.
And you can feel like you're down for whatever in the moment, and you're not actually down for whatever. So evaluate your own conscience.
And
set your boundaries.
Don't expect someone else to do it for you.
We have to be very careful about the concept of of like revoked consent, which is absolutely a thing that is going on college
it's just
campuses.
rewriting
What's revoked
history.
consent?
You can consent to a sexual encounter with somebody in the moment, but the next morning you regret doing so. So you find Mary, like how would you describe it? Like then they're like,
it's basically regret.
Yes.
So
in the truest sense
your
of the
partner's
word.
supposed to be a mind reader
Yes.
that you're
Yeah.
gonna regret it later.
Also, if you're a man and a woman and you're drinking, the man is still responsible for your well-being, even if you're both drunk.
I don't want to get too into the weeds about that, and I don't think that this situation was an example of that.
No.
But she said there were definitely some awkward points and a whole lot of red flags. I kept brushing them off as, well, we're pretty drunk, so ... She said things got uncomfortable fast, and I was put in the position of not really knowing what to do. So this was shortly after their bandmate's death, Tim Furyk.
And
He died of an overdose
fentanyl.
in April, and I think that's why Tillian was in such an unstable emotional state, and he was probably acting very erratic and not like his usual self. That's understandable.
For sure.
But the most concerning thing is the account that he slapped this woman across the face in a sexual manner, in like a sexual situation, and then he had not asked. There was no warning. And she said it was very hard, and she was like, hey, can you like not hit me? That was that really hurt, or at least can you like ask before you do that? And then he proceeded to immediately hit her again, just as hard, or if not harder. Like ear ringing, she said, hard. So that's really concerning, and I think it's like a very concrete thing you can point to as like abusive, if true. Now, I'm wary of any account of something that happened privately, right?
So the story with Tillian, I think there were 2 accusers, right?
This is the only one I've heard of.
So there was one, the first one that, to my knowledge, based on evidence that I've read and heard other people talk about, kind of got blown apart pretty quickly.
Okay.
And then when the second one came forward, it kind of hurt her credibility.
Definitely. That happens a lot.
On the second one, from what I understand, it wasn't just a one-night stand. It was like a 1 night, 2 night, 3 night. She flew and saw him, and some... it was multiple, like... And I'm not excusing it. You can't hit somebody in the face. It's fucking ridiculous. Not excusing that behavior, but... yeah, there's a lot more to the story here than that.
There always is, yeah.
I also want to ask a question about, they talk about, it says with their official like statement on the matter, where it says, the recent allegations against Tillian are something we take very seriously, and we have been deep in discussion regarding the appropriate action. Effective immediately, Tillian will be stepping away from the band in order to seek professional help. What I want to know is...
For context, guys, they're on tour right now, and they released an album, what was it, July 29th?
Yeah.
They're touring on that album without their frontman.
So what I want to know is, like, in a society that always talks about people, we had the article with Olivia Wilde saying she believed in restorative justice. Is there actually a world where they come back from this and people aren't still angry? There is no way to prove, like, where you come back after a certain amount of time, you're like, I'm better now.
Yeah.
You can't prove that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's just, whether people trust you enough.
Yeah.
And your word. But Johnny Craig did that like so many times.
Back in the day,
he claimed to get help so many times and was the same dysfunctional person his whole career.
And
all it really means is you step away for a period of time and you're out of the spotlight.
But I don't want it to seem like it's a timeout where you sit and you think about what you did. Yep. That's not the dynamic that should be had. It's something that you should seek out yourself, or else you're never going to change. And like, the concept of restorative justice is relevant here, because I don't know if the internet is prepared to accept that someone can do something abhorrent like what was alleged here and be redeemable.
Is this public? Should this be public information anyways?
Of course not. I don't think that this encounter should have ever happened in an ideal world, of course. But it's like when you're an entertainer, you have to know that like your private encounters are always at risk of becoming public information.
Yep.
I believe Tillian admitted fault in this and admitted that he did these things too. Right?
Did he?
I think he did.
So it's...
he said, I understand my responsibility around consent as a man, and I'm sorry that caused you to feel anything but respected and your boundaries honored. I appreciate the strength it probably took you to come forward with this account. I hold myself fully accountable for causing you this emotional pain. I will be entering an intensive therapy program to address this issue head on to become the healthiest, most responsible version of me, doing the work necessary to ensure this never happens again.
Just get married. All of these people should...
well, it didn't work for the
Fire singer. Brett's becoming the trad here.
I'm just saying...
I would have never expected that
traditional
outcome.
Marriage where you're not still having 4 girlfriends,
get
right?
Get the hell, like, just... like,
not an open marriage.
At the very least, understand that you're putting this at risk every single time when somebody... I'm not talking about his situation specifically. I'm talking about Win Butler. I'm talking about every rock artist who goes out, has sex with a ton of groupies. Just get married, because 2022 ain't the year to be
if anything, not because you care about like anyone else but yourself and your own reputation.
That's literally what I'm saying. Like,
be smart
and don't put yourself at risk by doing this.
I wonder what Dance Gavin Dance is going to do, because they still haven't clarified whether he's ever going to come back to the band. And it's kind of insane if they do permanently kick him out, because they've
been through a lot together.
Like, yeah, and his voice and what he brought to the band is totally,
if he doesn't come back.
Totally the linchpin of their success.
Right.
Who was the rapper who killed the dude in the parking lot and is like still working in like the Walmart?
I'm sure there's a list.
Oh yeah, that was. I think it was DaBaby.
They're like, he got like
he like squandered his career.
Yes, but he did it because like his is because he said very offensive things about the LGBTQIA community.
Oh yeah.
But for him, he got like he like killed a dude in a parking lot and nothing, like nobody cared.
Yeah. Well,
like
I didn't even hear about that.
This is a long time.
Somebody came up on him strapped, and he had his kid with him, I think, something like that.
It's just it's so weird. What areas of our social enforcement end your careers and which areas don't?
We're just weirdly moralistic and puritanical about the strangest,
which runs headlong into free love and the concept that we can just treat sex in a really, really.
I mean, you can talk about that and bloviate about that, but the reality is that, you know, clearly it's not working out for us.
Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.